Supporters of President Jair Bolsonaro gathered in the streets, a way to protest the results of Sunday's presidential election. They're waiting for President Bolsonaro to tell them what to do. They're convinced Luis Inácio Lula da Silva was elected president by committing fraud.
The election isn't over. We want a third round. We're not going to give the country to a thief so that we become Venezuela. He was sentenced to prison and was freed by a friend.
They have brought food to remain on the roads, but are still uncertain about what to do next. Truck drivers who support President Jair Bolsonaro were blocking this road that connects the capital, Brasilia, with other parts of the country. They were removed by the police using tear gas. This is an example of the extreme polarization that exists in this country and how there's lots of people here that are not happy with Sunday's results. There are roadblocks in several parts of the country. A close ally of Lula da Silva compared them to Donald Trump supporters who tried to take over U.S. Congress when Joe Biden won the presidency.
We want a military intervention because we can't accept these results. Lula is a thief and he should be in prison.
On Monday, there was little activity at the Planalto presidential palace. Jair Bolsonaro was there, but chose once again not to speak. The president's silence only adds up to the tension that has prevailed throughout the electoral process. His sons, who are members of Congress, expressed their support for their father on Twitter. One of them wrote, "Dad, I am with you for whatever is coming next." But while the incumbent president remains quiet, President-elect Lula da Silva has already started planning his cabinet and talking to leaders around the world, including a meeting with Argentina's President Alberto Fernández. Analysts say one of his top priorities should be ending the depolarization that exists in this country today.
It is clear that this final result shows a divided country, divided regionally, divided between the states that makes up the Brazilian Federation, and a division within society, and even among families, which make the first task of the new president-elect to seek to establish an agenda proposal to reduce this political polarization.
Jair Bolsonaro has 2 months left in office. Everyone is waiting to hear what he has to say about the election, and whether his message will bring reconciliation or sow further divisions within Brazilian society. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Lusania, Brazil.
Protests in Iran are intensifying over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, and as demonstrations there enter their 7th week. Many protesters are even calling the movement a revolution. Let's bring in ABC News' Patrick Reevell live from our London bureau with more on that and some of the day's other international headlines. Patrick, ABC News Live has obtained some new video showing some of the violence against protesters by authorities. And I do want to warn viewers, this may be hard to watch. Now, authorities are saying that the officers involved in this video will be disciplined, but it doesn't seem like these protests are dying down. How significant is this?
Yeah, Diane, I think quite the opposite, actually. Right now, it seems that the protests are growing and also the crackdown against them. You know, daily now we see attacks by security forces as well as pro-regime government, pro-government thugs attacking protesters. And that's what we seem to see in this video, which shows a protester being heavily beaten and then finally shot at point-blank range with a shotgun. And, you know, that video is causing outrage in Iran, but I think, you know, horrifically, it's not even that out of the ordinary from what we're seeing from this crackdown. We're seeing, as I say, this sort of attacks on protesters almost daily. Hundreds of protesters have been reported to be killed and injured since the protests began 7 weeks ago. But that isn't deterring the protests for now. We know students have been protesting and holding sit-ins again in the last 2 days. And I think right now the regime seems to be struggling to understand how it can deal with these protests. It seems to be wavering between more harsh repression, but also making these sort of feeble attempts to reach out to the protesters. And I think that confusion is feeding this sense that this really is an unprecedented movement against the regime, the biggest challenge to the Iranian regime since it was formed in 1979.
Rain in a second, but let's talk about that earthquake in the Pacific. What do we know about that?
Well, what I can show you right now is here's the Bay Area. There's the epicenter of it. And by our calculations on our computer, it's about 783 miles off to the south and the west of the Bay Area, that epicenter. Now, this occurred occurred at 9:53 tonight. Shallow quake 6 miles down with that 6.0. There is no tsunami warning here for the mainland U.S. Nothing impacting Hawaii at this point. Now, we want to remind you this is happening in one of the most seismically active zones in the world, the Ring of Fire. So if we get any more reports of earthquakes, any aftershocks, tsunami warnings, you can count on us to bring that information to you.
And whatsoever you shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. If ye love me, keep my commandments.